You could describe us as a duo.
A duo, yeah. On the surface, yeah.
And when the
Like
sun
everything else in
explodes.
life, it's a little more complex. Yep.
Yes, a new report out is confirming what I kind of feel like most of us were
I mean,
under the assumption of thinking where this is
yeah,
headed, but it looks like if you're trying to be a duo fan, this guy, the original, not the newer one, which
yeah,
is somewhere
yeah.
in my house. Future is how do I put this politely?
Same as it always was, bleak.
Yeah,
I mean, I feel like I called this one on day one. I recall sitting at a high stool table thing with you and Mary Jo and saying, nope,
I forgot about that.
right? We had
Yeah.
like 12 inches of space between the three of us. And I was like, no, nope, you know? And I actually distinctly remember what Frank Shaw said to me that day because I asked him about this. I said, I don't understand what you're doing. You've already failed in phones. No one's going to buy this thing. And he said, let me ask you a rhetorical question. I said, okay. He says, what if this thing existed in the market and it wasn't hugely successful, but it didn't lose money? Like it just kind of paid its way and it was like it wasn't like a net negative, would that be okay? And I was like, yeah, that would be fine. And he's like, all right. I said, is that what it's doing? He's like, we'll see. So I think that kind of shows you maybe the lofty goals they had for this thing. Maybe it doesn't lose money. Is that okay? But isn't that okay? I mean, if we're doing fan service here, basically.
Yeah.
Obviously they're fans of the Surface brand. I'm one of them, by the way. I really like Surface devices, but um, give them something that's sort of like something they might want to get excited about. We know these people love hinges. They want Microsoft to be back in phones, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know.
Here's a
It's never going to be big.
So if we go back to that announcement,
Hmm.
that was also where the Surface Neo was talked about, right?
Hmm.
And the Surface earbuds. What else was at that event?
These things mix up in my brain, so I don't
Yeah,
remember.
that's where my head goes to.
Neo and Duo were definitely at the same. I do remember. I feel like there was a bunch of educational stuff at this event too, like cheap laptops. Like when you walked in the door of the little pavilion thing they set up.
That's a Surface earbud. Let's see if this is going to be on Bing, so that's not going to be helpful.
Right, we don't have 20 minutes to do a query here. Let's see, Surface earbud.
I'm just trying to figure out what else was announced at that event.
So okay. So it would have been spring 2019 was when that
Yes.
Surface earbuds were announced, and I wrote it's funny, I can look back and see transparency of some of the things I write. Like I wrote something called Microsoft needs to make Surface earbuds,
Mm-hmm.
and that's because I knew they were gonna they were gonna make Surface earbuds. Yeah, this says October for the announcement.
So here we go. This might be it. It may have been.
April 20. No, that's not.
No, this says October actually.
Yeah, this is October 2.
So it
Yep,
might have been
October
Surface Pro
2.
7.
Yep.
Surface. No, this post is terrible to read, so we'll just get away from that.
They previously were making Surface headphones.
Holiday lineup. Is this blog post going to have it? Is this going to have? Oh, this might be it. This might be the blog post.
$249. They look like those. I don't know what you call them, like the earrings or whatever the people put in their ears that make them droop because they did like a giant hole in their ear or whatever.
So that event, I believe, had Neo Duo, Surface Laptop 3, Surface Pro 7, Surface Pro X.
A lot going on there, actually. Surface Laptop
think.
3, if I'm not mistaken, was the first one to have an AMD option, right?
Yeah.
I think. And I do remember being in that little room with you and Mary Jo again. They're doing the little reviewers thing for their Laptop 3. Probably Dan Layclock, something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, God, I can't remember the name of the Surface Pro X code name. The CPU. The only reason I asked, because I actually asked that in the press meeting, and I think Dan turned completely white. It was like, I don't think I can answer this.
Wow. Okay.
Well, he didn't want to confirm the code name of it. And
Yeah,
like,
because God forbid anyone know anything.
yeah, whatever. Anyway, so
Jeez.
I doubt we'll ever see a Neo. Doesn't look like we're going to see much in the Duo camp
Well,
anymore.
Neo, remember, was Windows 10X, and
Yeah.
10X was canceled. The UI came to Windows 11.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. It seems like, based on the rumors we've heard about Surface this year, they've kind of retreated back to what works, and it looks like we're going to get a bunch of tablet-y things. And by the way, the rumors on Duo were that maybe a Duo 3 or whatever the next version was would probably move to a folding screen anyway. And so I think the era, such as it is, of folding screens, or like dual screens, I guess, kind of came and went. It was, this was my primary takeaway at the time anyway. It was like, my primary takeaway was dual screens don't actually make it more efficient, but the other takeaway was, obviously the industry is moving to folding displays. This will be figured out. I realized the first versions were very unreliable and had all kinds of problems, but that's the nature of these things, right? Eventually we're going to have that, folding scroll thing that has a newspaper on it you're reading on the train or whatever, now that nobody reads newspapers or goes to work on a train. But that's the nature of technology, right?
I'm surprised nobody's come out with like calling this foldable rolling things. They should, like, the first phone should be called the Tora. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Oh, lo, let it be said.
Like, that would be such a
arisen
great
in the
name.
East. Yeah.
Nobody will ever do it for obvious reasons, but
Sure.
in my brain, it's like an SNL skit.
In your blasphemous brain.
Yeah, well, there's a lot going on in my brain. Microsoft also announced something that I thought was going to be great, but no. Xbox Game Pass referral offer. I thought they were coming in finally saying the Game Pass family plan was going to launch in the US, but not yet. Still not there.
You can get your Microsoft bucks by convincing your friends that Game Pass is worth it. I've been using Game Pass lately. Again, I literally swore off it just months ago, and then I've been playing Halo again. I've been kind of picking that up. I haven't looked at Redfall. I did look at the reviews, by the way, based on your commentary. You were right. Not good. Not good. There is a little glimmers of hope, and there people are saying, the bones are here. It's,
just like most games that launch these days, wait about a year, and then it'll be a good experience.
I feel like this is the whole world.
It really is.
I was ranting and raving about, I forget if they call it controlled whatever release, the thing that CFR is, whatever that is, feature release. And Microsoft it's not A/B testing. It's just it's an easy way to say it. But the search pill thing I keep complaining about from last year. That's what they did. They put it out to some small portion of the population. People started saying, "Hey, what the hell is this thing?" They never announced they were doing it. They never tested it, and they just tested it out in public. Like, Microsoft is testing new features with the mainstream users on Windows 11. Like, what? To me, that's insane. This is the debate we had in the mid 1990s. Netscape was doing this. Their whole thing was ship it, then fix it, and that's cute when you're a little browser with 1,000 lines of code or whatever. This is like Windows. It's millions of lines of code, and it's used by hundreds of millions, billions of people. It almost feels like an ethical lapse. And not coincidentally, it's what they're doing with AI too. They're like, And like
the AI is very much kick it out the door.
Like Microsoft's like, AI should be regulated. Oh, really? Then why did you ship it?
Well, did you see? Somebody had interesting commentary that Microsoft wants it to get regulated because it already has market position, and as soon as regulation comes in, it becomes harder to build new. Okay. So it's interesting.
Round and round we go. Yeah, perfect.
Yep. I'll tell you what I did use AI for. Now, when I say I use AI, I'm not using talking Bing, like actually using the actual.
I mean, real AI, not. Yeah.
So we have a product launch coming up for Stardock. Hopefully talking more about it next week. We'll see. Anyways, so we're building the web assets for it. And one of the things we do is all the screenshots we take, we round the corners 2%. So they're rounded so they match like the Windows 11 style. I had 14 images that I needed to do this to. Typically what you do is, right, you'd open it up in Photoshop, do the whatever. I went to ChatGPT. I said, write me a Python script that takes images from a folder, rounds the corners 2%, all four corners. Mind you, it took a couple of iterations.
Yep.
Kicked out a script, did it in 4 seconds.
Wow.
It was perfect. You just ran the script, you ran the little thing in VS Code. The pop-up said select your folder, you select it.
Yeah.
It crops it and then put an appendage at the end of the file name that says cropped, which is how we name things.
Yep.
Done.
This is why what you're saying, well, it should be obvious to anyone why that's amazing. But if it isn't, I'll just say I use a tool called Photoshop, which you may have heard of.
A little bit.
And And it has the ability to process multiple files, right,
Hmm.
and do things against it. But it does include stuff like that. You can do things like rename the files,
Hmm.
resize the images, constrain the proportions, etc., convert the file type, right?
Yep.
And then you can a couple of filtery type things, sharpen, auto color, auto contrast, etc. You can add a watermark.
Hmm.
There's a good little batch thing similar to what you're talking about. Nothing like that. And that's what's interesting about AI, because you've come up with, like, for Photoshop, for Adobe to add that to Photoshop, enough people would have to come to them and say, we really need this feature.
Right.
It's a manual process. It takes a long time. The people who use Photoshop get paid a lot of money. This is expensive. And then Adobe would listen to that and say, yeah, okay, that's cute. But you're the only person that ever said that. Um, and maybe eventually it happens. And then now there's one more feature in Photoshop, which has 3 million features. Fine. But what you've just described is an arbitrary task that you only have to do occasionally,
Yeah.
right? It probably is not worth it for Adobe to add it to Photoshop. However, it would be interesting if Adobe had that feature built in, by the way. But whatever, you can do this image processing thing, very specific use case, and there's probably a million versions of that. And I think you've just hit on exactly what AI is good for.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about what you just described is, one, I'd have to know that Photoshop could do that. Two, I'd also have to know how in
Yeah.
Photoshop
Oh,
to
yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
yeah. Oh, I'm not. By the way, Photoshop can't do it.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying. Photoshop, I'm sure has a masking tool built in where you can do what you're describing.
Yeah.
But you would have, right? You said you have to be an expert, and you would have to do it one at a time. It's not like there's nothing in Photoshop that says, "Hey, I just did this thing to this image.
Yep.
Now I would like to do that thing to all of these images."
Yeah.
You know, they don't. This is not AI, but when I was talking about, and Raphael was the one who turned me onto this, was I have this, like, I write a book, and it's 900 pages long, and it has hundreds and hundreds of images. And this book is too big and it's too long, and there are literally, in this case, hundreds of chapters, and there are, like, I speak as many references to these graphics as there are graphics, so hundreds and hundreds. And I realized one of the ways I can save space and download time on this book is to reduce the size that they display from 100% to 75%, or whatever the figure is. Do you have any idea? Well, of course you do. It would be incredibly laborious and time consuming to one at a time. And I could go into chapters and do a search and replace, or whatever you want to call it, find and replace. But, again, it's open, find and replace, save, open, find and replace. It's laborious. And then he said, why don't you just use Visual Studio Code? I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, just open the book chapter in Visual Studio Code, and it will do it to everything in the. And it, like you said, 4 seconds. It wasn't even 4 seconds. It was like done. I'm
Yeah.
like, like, again, not AI, but that, well, but still impressive. I mean, that's these tools are useful because they save you time. And my job, in this case, my job is I'm a writer, not a markdown specialist or whatever it is. I mean, like, I just want to get this done. And in your case, which is even, well, same thing really, or better, you're not a graphical artist or whatever, graphic artist, but you do need to get this done. And I guess you could have paid someone a lot of money to do it one at a time, or you're worth money every hour too. You're going to, like, I mean, yeah, these are good examples. This is how, because I think there's still a lot of people who are, I don't see it. I don't see, this is not a big deal. And it's like, oh, this is going to make things a lot more efficient.
Yeah, because I know Python. I've used it a while ago.
But actually, there you go. You're not a programmer.
But I'm not a developer.
You're describing, like, write me a Python script. That's an incredibly technical way to solve this problem, right?
But it was super. But Paul, it was,
No,
the thing is that it's
for
not
you as
anymore.
an individual. In other words, if you were going to sit there and try to figure out the code, I could never do that. I couldn't do it. You would be, you're like, Paul, learn Python,
Right?
and then figure out how it works with image processing. You'd be on the third version of this product before I came back. I'm like, hey, I figured it out,
And so to anybody sitting here listening saying, I don't know how to even use this. So what you do is you type and say, teach me how to install Python in VS Code. And it will literally walk you through the steps, kick out the statements you need to enter into PowerShell. Wow. And that's it. Like, you don't, the only skill you need is copy paste and the skill to understand how to correctly describe the thing you're trying to do.
And I feel like, in the same way that we contort like, if you've ever played a game like Zork back in the day, where you're like, I want to walk to the mailbox, and it's like, I'm sorry, I don't understand that. And then you have to sort of rephrase things until you get to the point where you're like, okay, the parser understands this style of speaking, whatever. But the thing is, like, the way these get parsed now, it's so much more advanced, but also you can go through these iterations, like you said, where you're like, okay, that got close. I obviously need to fine tune this a little bit. You're not writing software code here. You're speaking English.
No, it's
You know,
natural language, which has been the dream for decades.
That's really interesting.
The WoW starts now, Paul Thurrott.
You should share the image with us right now so we can see what the rounded corners look like.